He was a billionaire, yet he sat on the cold pavement. He wore torn clothes. His shoes had holes in them. His hands were covered in fake dirt. To the world, he looked like a broken man who had lost everything. But this was all a lie. He was testing the people he loved. He wanted to know who his real friends were. He asked his closest friends for a single dollar. They looked away. They pretended not to know him. Some even laughed at him. But then, the most unexpected thing happened. A 2-year-old child walked up to him. The child was the son of his housemaid. In his tiny, trembling hand, the boy held out a half-eaten piece of bread. He offered his only food to a man he thought was starving. How did a billionaire end up on the streets? Why did his wealthy friends betray him? And how did a toddler's simple act of kindness change everything? Stay tuned, because this story will touch your heart and change the way you look at the world forever. Before we dive into this incredible story, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. Also, leave a comment below and tell us where you are watching this video from. We love connecting with our viewers from all over the globe. Thomas Harrison was a man who had everything. At least that is what the world thought. Thomas was 45 years old. He lived in a massive mansion on top of a hill. The mansion had 20 rooms. It had a private cinema. The garage was filled with luxury cars. Thomas was the CEO of a major tech company. He had worked hard for his wealth. He spent 20 years building his empire. He barely slept. He sacrificed his youth for success. And success came. He was a billionaire. With billions of dollars came many friends. Thomas was always surrounded by people. His phone rang constantly. People invited him to lavish parties. They wanted to go on his private yacht. They wanted his advice, his connection, and mostly his money. Thomas was a generous man. He bought expensive gifts for his friends. He paid for their vacations. He helped them invest in businesses. He thought these people loved him. He thought they were his family. But lately, Thomas felt a strange emptiness. He had a beautiful home, but it was quiet. He had hundreds of friends, but he felt lonely. One evening, Thomas hosted a grand dinner party. The tables were filled with fine wine and expensive food. His friends were laughing and chatting. Thomas looked around the room. He saw Philip, his best friend from college. He saw Raymond, a business partner he had saved from bankruptcy. He saw Eleanor, a woman who always claimed she would do anything for him. Thomas decided to share some news. It was a test, though no one knew it yet. He stood up and tapped his glass. The room went silent. Everyone looked at the great Thomas Harrison. "My friends," Thomas said, his voice trembling slightly, "I have some difficult news. My company is facing a massive audit. There is a chance I might lose everything. I might lose this house. I might lose my wealth." The silence in the room became heavy. The laughter stopped. Philip cleared his throat. "Thomas, you are a genius. You will figure it out," he said with a tight smile. Raymond nodded quickly. "Yes, Thomas. We have faith in you. Now, let us get back to the wine." The party continued, but the mood had changed. People started leaving early. By midnight, the mansion was completely empty. Thomas stood by the window. He looked out at the city lights. He felt a deep chill in his heart. His friends did not offer to help. They did not even ask if he was okay. They just ran away from his bad news. The next morning, Thomas woke up with a clear mind. He realized a painful truth. People did not love Thomas the man. They loved Thomas the billionaire. They loved his money. They loved his status. If the money disappeared, would the friends disappear too? Thomas needed to know. He could not live a lie anymore. He needed to find out who truly cared for his soul. Thomas called his loyal assistant, George. George was an older man. He had been with Thomas for 15 years. George was the only person Thomas trusted completely. "George," Thomas said, "I am going to disappear for a week. I am going to play a game. But you cannot tell anyone." George looked worried. "What kind of game, sir?" "I am going to become a beggar," Thomas stated simply. "I am going to sit on the streets near the offices of my closest friends. I want to see what they do when they see me in need." George sighed. He knew Thomas was stubborn. He also knew Thomas was hurting. "Sir, the streets are dangerous. It is cold. People are cruel." "I need to feel that cruelty, George," Thomas replied. "I need to see the truth." Thomas prepared his disguise. He bought old, stained clothes from a thrift store. He ripped the knees of the jeans. He tore the sleeves of the jacket. He rubbed charcoal on his face and hands. He did not shave for days. He looked disheveled. He looked dirty. He looked like a man who had slept on concrete for months. He took off his luxury watch. He left his phone and his wallet in his safe. He took only a small cardboard sign and an empty plastic cup. Before he left, Thomas walked through his mansion. He saw Anna, his housemaid. Anna was a young widow. She worked long hours to support her 2-year-old son, Liam. Anna was always polite. She never complained. She kept the house spotless. Little Liam often sat in the kitchen. He was a quiet boy with big, bright brown eyes. He would play with wooden blocks while his mother worked. Thomas stopped by the kitchen. Anna was wiping the counter. Liam was sitting on the floor, chewing on a piece of bread. "Good morning, Anna," Thomas said. He was wearing his normal clothes for the last time. "Good morning, Mr. Harrison," Anna smiled. "Is everything all right? You look tired." "I am just taking a short trip, Anna. I will be gone for a few days. Take care of the house. And take care of little Liam." Thomas reached into his pocket. He took out a small piece of chocolate and handed it to Liam. The little boy's eyes lit up. He grabbed the chocolate and let out a joyful giggle. "Thank you, sir," Anna said gratefully. "Have a safe trip." Thomas nodded. He walked out of the mansion. He went to a small apartment he owned downtown. There, he changed into his beggar clothes. The transformation was complete. The billionaire was gone. The penniless man was born. Thomas walked to the financial district. This was the place where he spent most of his life. The streets were filled with people in expensive suits. Everyone was rushing. Everyone was busy. Thomas chose a spot on the sidewalk. It was right outside a luxury coffee shop. This was the exact coffee shop where his best friend, Philip, came every single morning. Thomas sat down on the cold concrete. The ground was hard. The wind was sharp. He held up his cardboard sign. It read, "Lost everything. Need food. Please help." He placed his plastic cup in front of him. Then he waited. Hours passed. Hundreds of people walked by. No one looked at him. People walked around him as if he were an object. Some people looked at him with disgust. They held their bags closer to their bodies. They stepped into the street just to avoid walking near him. Thomas felt a wave of sadness. He had never noticed how invisible poor people were. He used to walk these same streets. Had he also ignored people like this? He felt a pang of guilt. At 9 o'clock, he saw a familiar figure. It was Philip. Philip was wearing a tailored suit. He was talking on a wireless earpiece. He looked sharp and successful. Thomas's heart raced. This was the man he had known since college. Thomas had paid off Philip's student loans. He had given Philip's son a job at his company. They were supposed to be brothers. As Philip approached the coffee shop, Thomas reached out his hand. He looked up at his friend. "Please, sir," Thomas said. He changed his voice, making it raspy and weak. "Can you spare some change? I haven't eaten since yesterday." Philip stopped. He looked down at Thomas. Thomas did not hide his face. He looked directly into Philip's eyes. Philip stared at him for a second. Thomas thought Philip recognized him. He expected Philip to gasp. He expected him to offer a hand. Instead, Philip's face twisted in disgust. He did not see Thomas, his friend. He only saw a dirty, homeless man blocking his path. "Get a job," Philip snapped. "Stop begging from people who actually work for a living." Philip stepped over Thomas's legs and walked into the coffee shop. Thomas's hand dropped to the floor. His heart shattered. Philip did not recognize him because Philip never truly looked at poor people. To Philip, a poor man was not a human being. He was just trash on the street. Thomas sat there for the rest of the day. His cup remained empty. Not a single penny was dropped inside. The next day, Thomas moved to a different location. He sat outside a high-end restaurant. This was where Raymond, his business partner, always had lunch. Thomas's body was aching. Sleeping on the floor of his small apartment without luxury blankets had been tough. His back was stiff. He was truly hungry now. He had decided to eat only what people gave him. So far, he had eaten nothing. At noon, the lunch crowd arrived. The smell of expensive steaks and fresh bread drifted from the restaurant. Thomas's stomach growled loudly. Soon, Raymond appeared. He was with two other business executives. They were laughing and talking about a multi-million-dollar deal. Thomas crawled forward slightly. He rattled his empty plastic cup. "Sir, please," Thomas begged. "Just a small coin. Just enough for a piece of bread." Raymond stopped. He looked down at Thomas. Raymond was a man who owed his entire career to Thomas. When Raymond's first company failed, Thomas bought his debts. He saved Raymond from going to prison. Raymond looked at Thomas's dirty face. He frowned. He seemed to notice something familiar. He leaned closer. Thomas held his breath. Surely Raymond will recognize me, he thought. Surely he will help. Raymond stared at him for a long moment. Then, a look of realization crossed his face. He recognized Thomas. But Raymond did not reach for his wallet. He did not ask what happened. Instead, a cruel smile touched Raymond's lips. He stepped closer and whispered so his companions could not hear. "Thomas? Is that really you?" Raymond whispered. "Raymond, please." Thomas whispered back, tears welling in his eyes. "Help me." Raymond laughed quietly. "Look at you. The great Thomas Harrison. I heard rumors your company was failing, but I didn't think you would fall this fast. You look pathetic. Don't ever speak to me again. I don't associate with losers." Raymond turned back to his friends. "Let's go inside, gentlemen. The smell out here is terrible." They walked into the restaurant. Thomas sat frozen. The tears finally spilled over his cheeks. The betrayal was complete. Raymond did not just ignore him, he enjoyed his downfall. He was glad to see Thomas on the ground. Thomas realized that his wealth had created monsters. He had surrounded himself with vultures. They fed on his success, and they rejoiced in his failure. On the third day, the weather took a turn for the worse. It began to rain. The rain was freezing cold. Thomas's thin jacket was soaked within minutes. He was shivering violently. He sat in an alleyway near a luxury shopping mall. He felt truly miserable. He was no longer just acting. He was experiencing the true horror of poverty. He was cold, hungry, wet, and completely isolated from humanity. He saw Eleanor walking out of the mall. She was carrying several bags from expensive designer stores. Eleanor was a woman who had spent months trying to convince Thomas to marry her. She always told him that she loved his kindness and his soul. Thomas dragged himself out of the alley. He stood in her path. "Eleanor," he said softly. Eleanor stopped. She looked at the wet, dirty man standing in front of her. She did not recognize him immediately because of the rain and the mud on his face. "Get away from me!" she screamed, stepping back. "Don't touch me. Eleanor, it's me." "Thomas," he said, his teeth chattering. "I need help. Please." Eleanor looked closer. She recognized his voice. She looked at his face. She gasped in horror. But it was not a gasp of sympathy. It was a gasp of shame. She looked around quickly to see if anyone was watching her speak to a beggar. "Thomas? What is wrong with you?" she hissed. "Why are you dressed like this? Why are you begging?" "I lost everything, Eleanor," Thomas lied, watching her reaction. "I have nothing left. Can you please give me a place to stay for the night? Just until I get back on my feet." Eleanor's face hardened. The warmth she always showed him disappeared instantly. "Are you insane?" she said coldly. "I am a woman of high standing. I cannot be seen with a bankrupt beggar. If you have no money, you are nothing to me. Do not ever call me or come near me again." She hailed a taxi, threw her shopping bags inside, and drove away. She did not look back. Thomas stood in the rain. He felt a strange sense of relief mixed with his profound sadness. The truth was ugly, but it was finally clear. None of them loved him. Not one. His life had been an illusion. He had spent years protecting and funding people who would leave him to die in the rain. He walked back to his small apartment. He showered and dried himself. He wanted to end the experiment. It was too painful. He had seen enough. The world was a dark, selfish place. He decided he would go back to his mansion the next day. He would fire Raymond. He would cut off Philip. He would never speak to Eleanor again. He would live his life alone. He would lock his heart away and never trust another human being. The next morning, Thomas decided to do one last test. He did not go to the business district. Instead, he went to the public park near his own estate. He wanted to see how ordinary people treated him. He put on his dirty clothes again. He sat on a wooden bench near the playground. The sun was shining, but Thomas felt cold inside. He had given up on humanity. He sat with his head down, looking at his worn-out shoes. An hour passed. Children were playing. Parents were chatting. No one paid attention to the dirty man on the bench. Then he heard the sound of familiar footsteps. He looked up. It was Anna, his housemaid. She was pushing a stroller. Little Liam was sitting inside. Anna had a day off, and she had brought her son to the park to play. Thomas quickly lowered his head. He pulled his dirty hood over his face. He did not want Anna to see him. He felt ashamed. He did not want her to know he was playing a trick. He resolved to just sit quietly until she passed. Anna stopped near the bench. She sat down on the other end of the bench to rest. She took out a small plastic container from her bag. Inside the container was a single sandwich, cut into 2 pieces. It was a simple sandwich, just bread, cheese, and a thin slice of ham. It was likely all she could afford for their lunch. Anna gave 1/2 of the sandwich to Liam. She took the other half for herself. Liam took a big bite. He was chewing happily. Then his little eyes wandered. He looked across the bench. He saw the man sitting in the corner. Thomas was shivering slightly, partly from the morning chill and partly from his own heavy emotions. Liam stared at Thomas. Children have a strange way of seeing things that adults miss. Liam did not see a dangerous beggar. He did not see a social outcast. He just saw a person who looked sad. He saw a person who looked cold. Liam pulled on his mother's sleeve. "Mama!" He pointed his tiny finger at Thomas. Anna looked over. She saw Thomas. Thomas kept his face down, holding his breath. Anna did not look angry. She did not look disgusted. Her eyes filled with deep sympathy. She knew what it was like to struggle. Before she found the job at Thomas's mansion, she had gone to bed hungry many times. She knew the pain of having nothing. "Oh, the poor man," Anna whispered softly. She reached into her bag to look for money. She searched her small wallet. She only had a $5 bill. It was the only cash she had left for the week. She looked at the money, then looked at the shivering man. She hesitated for a second, then reached out to give it to him. But before she could stand up, something extraordinary happened. Little Liam stood up from his stroller. He walked over to Thomas on his unsteady toddler legs. He was holding his half of the sandwich in his tiny hand. It was already half eaten. It was his lunch. It was his favorite food. Liam stopped right in front of Thomas. He reached out his tiny arm. He pressed the sandwich against Thomas's dirty knee. "Here," Liam said in his sweet, high-pitched toddler voice. "Eat, man. Good." Thomas froze. He slowly lifted his head. He looked down at the little boy. Liam was smiling. His big brown eyes were full of pure, innocent love. He was not asking for anything in return. He just saw a hungry man, and he wanted to share his food. Thomas looked at the half-eaten sandwich. Then he looked at Liam. Anna gasped. Now that Thomas's face was lifted, she recognized him. She saw the charcoal on his face, but she knew those eyes. She knew that structure. Mr. Harrison. Anna stammered, her eyes wide with shock. "Is that you? What happened? Oh my goodness. Did you lose everything? Are you okay?" She rushed over and knelt beside the bench. She did not care that his clothes were dirty. She did not care that he looked like a beggar. She reached out and placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Mr. Harrison, Please tell me what is wrong, Anna said, her voice filled with genuine tears. If you have lost your home, you can stay with us. Our apartment is very small, but we have a couch. We can share our food. You were so good to us. Please, let us help you. Thomas looked at Anna. Then he looked at Liam, who was still holding out the sandwich. Something broke inside Thomas. The wall of ice around his heart melted away instantly. Tears poured down his face, washing away the fake dirt and charcoal. He began to sob. He wept for the betrayal of his friends, but more than that, he wept for the beautiful kindness of this child and this mother. In his lowest moment, when he believed the world was entirely evil, a poor housemaid and her baby proved him wrong. They had nothing, yet they were willing to share everything. His wealthy friends had everything, yet they refused to give a single crumb. Thomas reached out and took the tiny piece of sandwich from Liam's hand. Thank you, Liam, Thomas choked out through his tears. Thank you so much. He took a bite of the sandwich. It was the most delicious food he had ever tasted in his entire life. Tasted like love. Tasted like hope. Thomas stood up from the bench. He wiped his face. He looked at Anna, who was still looking at him with deep worry. Anna, Thomas said, his voice steady now. I am okay. I did not lose my money. This was all a test. Anna looked confused. A test, sir? Yes, Thomas explained. I wanted to see who my true friends were. I pretended to be poor. My rich friends turned their backs on me. They insulted me. They left me in the rain. But you, and your beautiful son, you offered me your home. You offered me your only food. Anna lowered her eyes, blushing slightly. It is just what any person should do, Mr. Harrison. We must care for each other. No, Anna, Thomas said firmly. Most people do not do this. You are a rare soul, and your son has a heart of gold. Thomas picked up little Liam and held him close. He did not care about the dirt on his own clothes. Liam giggled and wrapped his small arms around Thomas's neck. The test is over, Thomas declared, and everything is going to change. Thomas went back to his mansion. He took a long bath. He dressed in his finest suit. But he did not feel like the old Thomas anymore. He felt reborn. The next day, Thomas called a massive meeting at his company headquarters. He invited Philip and Raymond. He also invited Eleanor. They all showed up, thinking Thomas was going to announce a new business deal. They had heard rumors that his financial trouble was just a false alarm. They wanted to be close to his wealth again. They sat around a large glass table in the conference room. Thomas walked in. He looked powerful and confident. Philip smiled warmly. Thomas, my friend, I am so glad to see you are doing well. I was so worried about you. Raymond nodded. Yes, Thomas. We always knew you would bounce back. You are a king. Eleanor smiled sweetly, leaning forward. Thomas, darling, I missed you so much. We should have dinner tonight. Thomas looked at them. His face was cold as ice. He did not smile. He did not sit down. A few days ago, Thomas began, his voice echoing in the quiet room. I sat on the street. I was cold. I was wet. I was hungry. The smiles on their faces began to fade. They looked at each other uneasily. Philip, Thomas pointed at his college friend. I asked you for change. You told me to get a job. You stepped over my legs. Philip's face went completely pale. Thomas, I didn't know it was you. That is the point, Philip, Thomas said coldly. You only respect me because of my money. You don't respect human life. Thomas turned to Raymond. Raymond, you recognized me. You laughed at me. You told me I was pathetic. You rejoiced in my failure. Raymond opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked down at the table, his face red with shame. And Eleanor, Thomas looked at the woman who claimed to love him. You told me I was nothing to you without my wealth. You left me in the rain. Eleanor hid her face in her hands, beginning to cry fake tears. Thomas, please, it was a mistake. It was not a mistake, Thomas said. It was the truth. You are all fired from my life. Raymond, our partnership is dissolved. I am buying out your shares for pennies. Philip, your contracts with my company are terminated. Eleanor, do not ever come near me again. You all loved my wallet, not me. Now, get out of my sight. They stood up slowly. They knew there was no arguing with Thomas. They had lost the greatest benefactor they ever had. They walked out of the room with their heads bowed in deep shame. Once they were gone, Thomas took a deep breath. He felt a great weight lift from his shoulders. He had cleared the weeds from his garden. Now it was time to plant the seeds of true love. Thomas called Anna into his office later that afternoon. She was wearing her simple maid uniform. She looked nervous. "Mr. Harrison? Did I do something wrong?" she asked. "No, Anna. You did everything right." Thomas smiled warmly. He handed her a large gold envelope. Anna opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a legal document. "What is this?" she asked, her eyes wide. "This is the deed to a new house," Thomas said. "It is a beautiful 5-bedroom home in a wonderful neighborhood. It belongs to you now. And this," he handed her another paper, "is a trust fund for Liam. He will never have to worry about his education. He will never have to worry about his future. He will be taken care of for the rest of his life." Anna gasped. She covered her mouth as tears spilled from her eyes. "Mr. Harrison, I cannot accept this. It is too much. I only offered you a sandwich." "You offered me a piece of your heart, Anna," Thomas said softly. "You and Liam saved my soul. You showed me that goodness still exists in this world. Money is just paper. But what you gave me was priceless." Thomas did not stop there. He promoted Anna to be the manager of his entire estate, paying her a massive salary. He became a second father to little Liam. He spent his weekends playing with the boy in the park, teaching him how to ride a bicycle, and watching him grow. Thomas continued to run his company, but his life was completely different. He stopped attending lavish parties with fake friends. Instead, he spent his time doing charity work. He built shelters for the homeless. He funded soup kitchens. He spent his billions making sure that people who were ignored by the world were finally seen and loved. He learned the greatest lesson a man could learn. True wealth is not measured by the size of your bank account. It is not measured by the luxury cars in your garage or the number of powerful friends you have. True wealth is measured by the love in your heart. It is measured by your willingness to share the little you have with someone who has nothing. A billionaire had to become a beggar to find the richest souls in the world. And those souls belonged to a humble housemaid and her beautiful, generous child. What do you think about Thomas's test? Would you have passed it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next story.